Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So we have new data. We have several polls, one nationwide, one out of a very key state ahead of the 2026 midterms. And it's not looking like this blue wave that a lot of Democrats are expecting, a lot of Democrats are starting to talk about, is really materializing. And part of it is their own brand's problem. And this is true because you look at the approval rating, according to several polls that we've seen of the Democrat Party, one had their very favorable rating at just 7% that we talked about in the last video, but it had a 27% nationwide. That's not good. And now this poll has it at 30%. Donald Trump, he's sitting high. He's roughly 50-50. But the Democrats' approval rating as a party is just in the gutter. Now, the Republicans is not like ridiculously through the roof. It's not the opposite of it. It doesn't mean that Democrats are going to get 30% of the vote. But what it does show is that their party is not really giving people a reason to approve of them or a reason to turn out for them ahead of a midterm. Because if you look at 2018, the Democrats in the exit polls had a positive favorable rating. It was like 48% favorable, 45% unfavorable, and the Republican Party was vastly in the negatives. Now the Republicans are looking more like that. Donald Trump's approval rating is much higher now. We don't know what it's going to be like then. Could be a little higher, could be a little lower. But the Democrats' approval as a party, they're rivaling second-term Bush levels. They're 20 points below Trump's. And an election that's partially a referendum on Trump, but also a referendum on the opposition as well, the Democrats, because people are going to be voting, generic Democrat versus generic Republican. It's very possible you could see this midterm not going as planned for a lot of these Democrats. And you kind of see this out of a state like New Hampshire. And you look at the poll in New Hampshire here, the Senate race, Chris Sununu, very likely to run. Yeah, more of a moderate type of Republican, but it's a blue state, New Hampshire. Hasn't gone Republican at the presidential level in 25 years, and we don't really know if that's going to change anytime soon. But Donald Trump, he got close in New Hampshire, but he couldn't quite get it. It's been the white whale for Republicans at the presidential level. It used to be Pennsylvania, then Trump won it. Nevada, then Trump won it. Now it's probably New Hampshire, but at the state level, it's relatively Republican. Kelly Ayotte will likely win re-election, and a wildly popular former governor who left office with approvals in the 60s, Chris Sununu, he is favored over Representative Chris Pappas by 9% in the first poll. That is brutal for Democrats because let's talk about this. If New Hampshire were to go Republican, because already out of the gate, the toss-up map, if we put New Hampshire, which if Jeanne Shaheen ran for re-election, probably you'd say lean blue to likely blue, and Chris Sununu wouldn't run. Now we're talking about this entering, lean to likely red, territory. I don't know if it's going to stay that way, but let's just say he wins it, because people will point to Larry Hogan. Oh, Larry Hogan was up in the polls. But Larry Hogan outran Trump by 10 in a presidential year on the same ballot in Maryland. And people in those early polls, they didn't know Also Brooks. They didn't know who she was. She got a lot of funding. She won by 10, a little bit more than that. Sununu, on the other hand, New Hampshire was the closest state in 2024 by raw votes. And the fact that he's already polling high against somebody that has a lot of name recognition, but also he's polling above 50%, 53 to 44, that means you don't really have undecideds. And this is from a very accurate pollster, Qantas. They were one of the most accurate polls in the 2024 election. And that is not where you want to be if you're the Democrats in New Hampshire, because already you're talking about, North Carolina, you might not win it. I'd say Tom Tillis, he's slightly favored against even Roy Cooper. Against somebody not named Roy Cooper, I think he'd be favored by a couple of points. But still, that's an uphill climb for Democrats. The registration data there doesn't look good. Georgia, it's a midterm electorate. It's going to be slightly whiter. That helps you in Georgia. The white college-educated demographic is still relatively Republican in Georgia. Not as much as it was back in the day, but partially you could argue that's due to changing age demographics, etc. in the Atlanta metro. Brian Kemp running for it. He probably wins, in my opinion, possibly by more than 2, but we'll put it as tilt Republican. And even if Democrats go out there And they get Michigan, which it's appearing like some of these early polls are relatively close. Doesn't matter who they're putting at the top of the ticket for the Republican side. You're still talking about 55 seats. That is not good for the Democrats. They will not retake the Senate for a very long time because there's no pathway in 2028. There would be virtually no pathway in 2030. And you see states like Arizona, Nevada, the registration data in both of those states looks very good for the Republicans. But even if you look at a state like New Hampshire, you can see the same phenomenon happening here where the Republican registrations, they're actually, not only are they ahead of the Democrats, but they're gaining. And we didn't expect this because, we knew that a lot of people would cross over and vote for, Nikki Haley to mess with the Republican primary. People who were independents, people who were Democrats, they did that. But still, even after you saw a little reversion after the primary, which was expected, you then saw gains once again. A lot of these working class white voters in New Hampshire, finally, I guess you would say, choosing to abandon the Scranton Joe train and support Donald Trump once again. And he almost won the state out of nowhere. And we're kind of seeing this. The Democrats in the state of New Hampshire, they're shrinking. They've lost 70,000 voters, but Republicans have gained 50,000 voters since 2023. So already, at the state level, it's a red state. There are some of these like rhino Republicans, but those same people like Chris Sununu. He's not going to be perfect, but he might be one of the only people who can win, and he'll vote with you, 85% of the time. That's a net positive. And New Hampshire is a state where you look at this, it voted for Hillary Clinton by just a few thousand votes, was the closest state in the country by raw votes back in 2016. Michigan technically closer percentage-wise, but you can see that, Trump only got 46.5%, not even. In 2020, he went down a tad bit. Biden was able to win the state by 7, but that reverted back in 2024. Donald Trump was able to get closer to 48% of the vote. Kamala Harris won the state, but she only won it by 23,000 votes. That was the closest state by raw votes in the 2024 election, once again, as it was in 2016. So it's not like this is an impossible task, especially because it's an open seat. Chris Sununu is popular, and it seems like Republicans, they're getting their strong recruits. The Democrats aren't doing it. You've had incumbents retire in Minnesota, incumbents retire in Michigan, New Hampshire. We don't know what's going to happen in Virginia. Regardless, I don't think Youngkin is going to go for it. Even if Warner retires, I still think it'd be a little bit of an uphill climb. But still, regardless, you're looking at this, and Republicans seemingly are nabbing their recruits, or apparently nabbing recruits in a lot of key battleground places. On top of that, it does seem as if the Democrats, even their incumbents in some places like John Ossoff, who is running for re-election, he has been voting just like one of the most radical members. He voted to shut down the government, was a political layup for him. He missed it completely. That's not exactly something that is all that positive, and you kind of see that taking place. They never learn. They still think it's going to happen. And it's like people say New Hampshire can't happen, but it was closer than North Carolina was in 2024. Not a lot of people know that. We never talked about it as like a Big 7 swing state. But North Carolina, Arizona, which was like just about the same margin of victory for Trump as New Jersey was for Kamala Harris, we never really talked about as a swing state. Maybe we should have. And Sununu is more popular there than Roy Cooper ever was in North Carolina. But so many Democrats will say, no, North Carolina is an auto flip. New Hampshire is going to be an auto hold. That's not entirely how it works. And we're kind of seeing this unfold everywhere. Qantas also pulled Georgia, and they have Kemp winning over Ossoff by 3 points. I think that's going to be similar to the Rick Scott victory we saw in 2018, where a sitting governor runs for Senate against somebody who was overrated by a lot of people and then ends up winning. And I think you're going to see the same thing happen in 2026 next fall. But it's like, the House, for the Democrats, their floor is lower than the Republicans' floor, like the toss-ups. They're going to be very competitive races there. But you could argue Republicans, they're favored to hold the House even. You could argue that they're favored to expand in the Senate. And you could argue that they're going to gain net governorships, despite Donald Trump being in the White House, because usually the midterm years favor the party out of power. But that's when we go back here, because you look at this and it's like, Trump, his approval rating isn't the best, but the approval rating of the Democrat Party is just in the gutter. And you have to inspire people to turn out. And this Trump hatred, it wasn't where it was back in 2018. You didn't have this big resist wave, all these protests. The protests, wherever they happen, are getting clowned on, and they're protests supporting objectively losing issues like mass deportations, which Donald Trump ran on and won on. And there's still a lot to execute in that department, but still, that's besides the point. When you're looking at this, 2026, it's not shaping up to be great for the Democrats, but for the Republicans, it's just like New Hampshire. That's a state that we weren't even going to think was going to flip because we didn't think Sununu would go for it. Now he's teasing a run because the seat is now open. And Democrats, at a very minimum, are going to have to defend it. And even if they do get it, but they lose Georgia and they don't flip North Carolina or Maine, it's still a disastrous year that's on the horizon for them. And we'll see if they are able to learn from it if it does happen. But anyways, guys, make sure you guys like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.